I am so happy with how this looks for the Rangers. We have a pitcher, Jack Leiter, and he is a dude.
And while I do think his hitting is worse than Derek Jeter, it's not that far off.
You're not mentioning 2006. You can mention the other people, not 2006.
Oh, just because I bought the best soap doesn't mean your room's going to be clean. It just leaves it to where I don't believe that the Canadians had a shot.
I really don't like the Clippers just kind of sending it in when they're like...
Hi, this is Kelly Forbes with the Dallas Stars, and listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NHL Opinions of the Week in Austin. Of course, Toronto always gets the love since they're a big market team, but they received the number one overall pick, and then they fired Craig Berube, their head coach for the past 2 years. And to me, I wonder if this happens if they don't get the number one overall pick.
Yeah, and I also think that, look, there was some discussion during the year whether Berube was going to get fired. I do think that waiting until the end of the year is a good move if you're going to fire a coach. I think it helps with the, with how the team takes it. But also there was definitely some disagreements between the players and Berube. And whether it was Nylander, I think, kind of playing for Berube to get fired, or other things that occurred. What I wonder about is something I asked you recently. Does this increase or decrease the chance for Matthews to get traded or stay with the team? So for getting traded, does this increase the chances of him getting traded or decrease the chance of him getting traded?
I would say increase the chances of him getting traded, because I could use this new coach move being as a way that you could move on from Matthews and just start building young.
I get that, but I think because of the disagreements that the coach had with the team, I could see this being them choosing Matthews over Berube. I could see that being a discussion again. I think that the team definitely didn't see, by the team I mean the players, didn't see eye to eye with sort of what Berube wanted for the team during some games. But I think this supports Matthews staying more. But obviously that's a wait and see sort of scenario. I do think this will be a new era in Toronto, whether the fans want it to be or not, because of not just Marner being gone, but now that they have another really high pick, they missed the playoffs. It breaks off of that consistent make the playoffs, lose in the first round, or that 1 year, the second round, to now it's kind of a retool. I know you have the first pick, so saying retool doesn't really make sense, but you still have a lot of the same guys, whether it's Nylander or Matthews or Tavares on the team last year. So you can really decide whether you want a full rebuild or retool. And I think that whichever way you go, rebuild or retool, firing Berube makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. To me, this kind of acknowledges their window closing and kind of retooling, reopening that window in different ways, using the number one overall pick, which is where I could see Matthews getting traded. But I also understand keeping him. It would make it easier to rebuild around having Matthews, an already top tier goal scorer, and giving him a new roster, being that aging veteran and that center, that kind of guy that's gone through it for Toronto. And I remember Berube was brought in when Toronto wanted to be competitive. And to me, I think after last season, then receiving the number one overall pick, it kind of showed that they were different and they weren't near their contending window anymore.
Yeah, that's true. And I do think that the organization is kind of felt, after they fired everybody from the head of hockey ops down to now Berube and everybody basically in between, that this is a time for change in the organization and that they were not reaching par. So I think Matthews could see this as a move, that they are understanding that something has to change for them to actually go further in the playoffs. Something has to give, and Toronto's decided that these are the moves necessary. Obviously, McKenna or whoever they choose at number one is going to have to be a good player for them to turn this around quickly or within a 2 year window of Matthews' contract. But I think that this speaks more to them being committed to being good quicker than them being like, we need to rebuild. We'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, I agree. It's finding someone with a new vision and kind of looking at this roster anew while looking at, okay, I have some solid pieces and what they can do. I'm curious, how much impact do you think Matthews has on this team? Like
Impact in what
coaching,
way?
will I get his presence impacting the team and wanting to be better, but how much power do you think he has if he's like, I don't like the direction you're going in, I'm going to request a trade?
I think he has a lot of power when it's determined by like whether or not he's going to get traded. But I do think that he has power because the team knows how good he is. So I think he probably had a conversation with the organizations like, hey, we need to make some changes if you want me to stay around. But if he requests a trade, I do believe that they're not going to try to do a Marner situation and wait until you basically get nothing for him. I think the pressure he's putting on Toronto will help them change for the better. And I do think he has a pretty high amount of impact in decision making, but also Toronto's got to look out for themselves as well. So they have to know that Matthews has his own agenda, along with Toronto having their own agenda. Now, both are obviously trying to win a cup. It's just, is Matthews trying to do that with Toronto? I think at this point, the plan for Matthews would be to stay, but that's something that the organization and him are going to have to see if their timelines coexist.
To me, I feel like he has some power, but not entirely. I could see Toronto just going like, we want to move on from you. I think this upcoming season is going to be a big one for them because yes, I doubt. Well, yeah, I feel like the number one overall pick would be playing this year, and that gives you a sense of how close you are to at least returning to the playoffs. Not saying a cup contender, but returning to the playoffs and being competitive in the playoffs, which Toronto did at its height. It's just they couldn't get far in the tournament or in the playoffs. So that to me is where you could see this year and maybe them deciding, okay, let's move on from Matthews. This is worse than we thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Toronto's definitely. I think this is good for Toronto. Obviously, getting the number one pick is good for a lot of teams, but this is kind of an organizational reset that they decided to press that I think was desperately needed, so that the morale and especially the fans, how they feel about the team, they could sort of see this as a new era for Toronto, so that they don't have to judge them against the previous failures of the past couple years.
Exactly. And looking at it, Matthews, you mentioned 2 years. He's at a cap hit of 3.25 million, and that's definitely going to go up. So I think looking at a team in the next year, they would love to bring Matthews on 1 year and then possibly extending him when they do it. But even if it's a 1 year rental, Toronto would get a lot of, I would say, attention for Matthews and kind of intrigue and buyers for that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So let us know your thoughts in the comments. We appreciate you listening to Outsiders Opinions.